At Christmas, my sister raised her glass and said, "We voted and cut you off." Everyone smiled. They thought I'd sit there and take it. Instead, I placed a folder on the table. Every dollar, every lie, every betrayal. Page 23. A hotel bill. 2 names. Not her husband. She called me a psychopath. I said it's called documentation. Then I stood up and said, maybe you won't need your fallback anymore. And I walked out into the storm. Alone but finally free. "Greetings, this is on." My sister responded, "We voted and cut you off," as she got up and clinked her glass at Christmas. Everybody gave a nod, grinned as if it didn't matter. But the bit that nobody noticed? Behind closed doors, they spent the years draining my bank account. I paid for the therapy. I paid for the wedding, the hospital scare that was later proven to be a fabrication. And they returned, asking for assistance, just as I was about to leave. How did I become their only source of support after previously being considered not family? Have you ever wondered what happens if you become the one to say enough and stop trying to fix the family? I'll show you. One of the nice bottles of Cabernet I had in my stash was the one I brought with me. I even tied a bow around it, like a fool. For example, I thought that this year would be different. I rang the bell at Celeste's place and the porch light flickered once. As the door creaked open and Mom's voice echoed through the hall, I was struck by the scent of cinnamon and pine. She said "An's here" with phony joy permeating every word. The house inside resembled a Hallmark card. Warm illumination, a roaring fire, everything. By the tree, Sophie was shaking a box bearing her name. My father didn't even move out of his chair. Celeste grinned as if we were on TV. She remarked, "You're early." Needs to be pleasant. No children, no actual obligations. I put the wine on the table with a courteous grin. I tried to sound lighthearted when I said, "Better early than dramatic." She refrained from laughing. The ham was already carved, the veggies were roasted, and the napkins were folded perfectly. Celeste was always able to create a disaster that was picture perfect. I sat down close to the end of the table. Like a terrible radio station, small chat buzzed, half-hearted laughs, static tension. Nobody inquired about my well-being. My promotion from the previous quarter went unnoticed. They were obviously just waiting for something. Then it took place. Celeste got to her feet. I'm holding a glass of wine, donning the lipstick she reserved for winning situations. She stated, "I think it's time we got honest before we cut the pie." I raised my head. Before she could finish the phrase, my stomach churned. Like a cocky senator, she looked around the table. "We cast our votes. We have also determined that you are no longer a member of this family." I blinked. I initially believed I had misheard her. Or perhaps she was making a joke. Mom, however, gave a nod of consent. "It was inevitable eventually," she remarked while buttering her roll. Silently, Jonah gazed at his plate. He struck his wine glass with his fork. "It's for your own benefit." Sophie laughed. It seemed like a game to her. "What about my father?" He avoided even looking at me. "This kind of tension isn't healthy," he muttered, shifting in his chair. It seemed as if I had departed from my body. Their words were colder than blades, and they didn't pierce me like that. Like going outside without a coat in a storm. There's no one to let you in. I forced myself to breathe and remained silent for a while. After then, I took a big folder out of my coat pocket. They ceased to laugh. When I placed it on the table, it created a dull thump that was more painful than any curse. Paper hitting wood. "What is that?" Celeste smirked as she asked. I leaned back, twitching at the corners of her mouth. I thought I'd come prepared since we're being honest. As if expecting confetti to fly out, she snatched up the folder. One by one, her fingers turned the pages that her face lost the smile it had. Bank transfers, receipts, screenshots of emails, a record of all the times they texted, called, or pleaded, a timeline that cried out what I had been ignoring for years. Then she came to page 23, a Charleston hotel bill for 2 nights and 1 room. Signed with both her and another person's names. "Lena." She pushed the folder aside as if it were filthy. "You are a psychopath," she growled. "Have you been spying?" I didn't wince. "No. I have been recording. There is a distinction. Pulling the folder toward him, Jonah began to read. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. At last, my mom said something. "How dare you use your assistance as a weapon in this way?" I gazed at her, feeling more composed and icy than before. "You thought I was an ATM, but you called it aid. Counselor." A sponge of guilt. I got to my feet. Even though my legs were trembling, I stood my ground. "You claimed that I wasn't related." I looked at everyone at the table. "Then perhaps your fallback will no longer be necessary." Nobody said anything. In her hand, Celeste's glass slanted. Sophie inquired as to if the game was still being played. I grabbed my coat and proceeded to the door. "Don't cry. Don't beg. No second chances. The storm and me alone." I went outdoors as the cold air hit me more forcefully than I had anticipated, and thunder boomed in the distance. Behind me, the door did not bang. It closed with a click. Nearly courteous, as if the home itself was too exhausted to argue. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. Allow them to rest in the quiet they have carved. Their voices reverberated through the walls as the door clicked shut behind me. I continued to walk, both across the yard and down the steps. The frost-covered grass crunched beneath my feet, as if it were owed me something. When I heard her, I was halfway to the street. "You believe you are superior to us?" Celeste's voice tremulous and high-pitched. "That folder demonstrates your obsessive nature." I'm sick. I didn't look back. However, I heard the folder strike the interior wall, pages flying about like parched grass and flames. "Anne, you're a fucking parasite," she cried. Then there was quiet. Next, "What on earth is Lena?" I was stopped by that. I turned just a little. Enough can see him now, holding the document, standing close to the dining room window. He wasn't only looking, they were looking, digging. "This is not appropriate here," Celeste yelled. Her voice, however, was no longer sharp. "Who is Lena?" I asked. Jonah didn't yell. He didn't have to. His voice simply fell, steady and low like a tie-wearing menace. Suddenly my mother sprang to her feet. "This isn't the place or time." "There's no way it is," Jonah retorted. "You all desired truthfulness." Everyone clapped. "We're being truthful now." I listened as my sister's idyllic evening came to an end while leaning on the mailbox. Celeste whispered, "She's a friend." Jonah read out a second line. 3 evenings, suite with an ocean view. Charleston, signed by Lena Quinn and Rose Adams on your Joint account. A friend? She was working on a project with me. Cease. Simply stop. I could hear the treachery sinking in when his voice broke. "You misled me. You also told her lies. I didn't have to see the others." That tone seemed familiar to me. It was the real-time sound of a marriage falling apart. No fireworks. It was just the silent fissure of confidence. My fingers were shaking, but not from the cold. As I took my phone out of my coat pocket. A fresh voicemail. Unknown figure. I hit the play button. "This is Ewan from Marlowe and Fisher, Miss Adams. Regarding the family trust, your father wanted me to get in touch. You recently withdrew certain authorizations," he remarked. "He wants to talk about backup plans." I ended the call. Immediately another call came in. The same figure. Ewan repeated Miss Adams when I responded, "I apologize for catching you in this state. Your dad insisted that I get in touch with you. He believes that you are still named as a power of attorney on a number of fallback clauses." "No longer," I said bluntly. "I signed off?" "It was decided." "Well," Ewan went on, "he says that certain assets still default through you unless you actively change Clause 14b through a separate filing. He is requesting a meeting." I chuckled. A quick, brief breath that was not at all amused. "Inform him that I no longer have that authority. And I wouldn't do anything, even if I did." "Comprehensive," he said. "Do you want us to give him written notice?" "No," I replied. "Give him time to stew." I hung up and gazed at the silent street. Someone had one of those plastic reindeer sets lighting up a few homes down. The red nose seemed to be making fun of me by blinking on and off. The house had fallen silent once more behind me. Stunned but not calm, after giving it one more glance, I started to move. Staying would have meant seeing their faces as the truth burned through their falsehoods. Not because I needed oxygen. I had already swallowed ash for a lifetime. My hands had stopped shaking. I evened out my breath. And I was as certain that they didn't break me tonight as I was certain of my name. I was just proven correct by them. I had no destination in mind. Only distance. A long way from the house. From them. From the ruins of what was once considered family. I continued to walk till the last of the adrenaline was sobered by the cold. Until the pain in my chest subsided and I could bear it. Then I climbed into the vehicle and drove away. Just away, not toward anything. I didn't return home. Instead, I drove mindlessly. The lights are still shining in the surrounding communities, through historic streets with concrete that was always cracked in the same spots. Eventually, when I was too young to know what true serenity meant, my tires found their way to Dad's favorite spot, the gravel shoulder beside the lake. In the moonlight, the water appeared to be glass. No ripple. Not easy. Nothing but silence. I turned off the engine and allowed the quiet to envelop me like a second skin. When I needed clarity, I used to come here, prior to notices of overdraft and job deadlines, prior to them discovering that I could be relied upon for anything. I was also punished for the same reason. I reclined in the driver's seat and gazed out toward the pitch-black horizon. I didn't roll up the window, but the cold seeped in through the crack. My thoughts quickly strayed before returning to them. Not this evening. Not on Christmas. However, each time they inquired, I responded in the affirmative. One day at 6:15 a.m. Dad called. "Honey, just a little assistance." In the end, the dental work was not covered. He said it as if I had made the initial offer. Then Mom's bill arrived for things I had never seen and a card I had not seen. She had murmured, "Just this once," as if it were a friend's secret. Working with a life coach in California, Celeste's emergency therapy ended up being energy healing. Without asking, I sent the money, pondering whether it was genuine. Perhaps she was in trouble after all. Next came Sophie's tuition costs. Ria stated over the phone, "We wouldn't ask, but you know how tight things are, and the scholarship didn't come through." Nobody made a repayment offer. Nobody ever inquired about my financial situation. When there was thankfulness, it was flimsy, encased in anticipation and shame. You are the only one who can assist. The intelligent one is you. You're doing well. We don't. The outcome was always the same. With more money in my bank account, I'm breathing more quickly, and some took my silence as permission. I once took a book which I had enjoyed as a kid, as a gift to Sophie's birthday celebration. Celeste gave it a look at me. She mumbled, "I suppose we all give what we can." I was the family's pillar, they used to say. Not until I was unable to stand up straight did I realize they were referring to the person who was carrying the most of the weight. With both hands still on the steering wheel, I snapped back to the present with a blink. My phone came back to life. It was a memory this time. It was 3 years ago. A picture of Dad looking sickly and pathetic in a hospital bed. "We're at the emergency room," Mom captioned the photo. "I'm not sure how long he has left. Come please." I recalled that day's flight home, calling off meetings, extending the project's due date, wearing high heels as they hurried directly from the airport to the hospital. I had anticipated the beeping of machinery, monitors, an IV perhaps. Instead, I discovered him griping about the cold soup while watching a football game. Mom waved her hand and said, "Oh, they were just being cautious. Isn't it better to be safe than sorry?" Secure? Yes. Later, while I sat in the waiting area and gazed at the vending machine, I realized that my emergency was never truly theirs. The emergency contact was me, the one who fixes things, the contingency plan. Not the daughter. Never the daughter. After switching off my phone, I got out of the car and headed toward the lake's edge along the well-traveled trail. My face went numb as the wind sliced over the sea. I didn't give a damn. I wasn't angry for the first time that night. I wasn't depressed. I had just finished. I was never needed by them, I muttered into the darkness. They required what I had to provide. I also gave too much. Like a breath held for too long. 3 days went by, with the exception of taking the dog for a walk, and acting as though my building was still normal. I hardly left my apartment. The city of Asheville has become icy. The kind that, while being encased in wool, penetrated your bones and damaged your flesh. There had been no answers from the lake. At least it hadn't made any demands of me. Rhea then texted, "Let's get together." Us. There is no pressure. I spent too much time staring at the message. Initially I wanted to remove it. Asking, "What do you want now?" was my second move. But curiosity, foolish as it is, prevailed. I decided on a public setting. A small cafe hidden away in downtown's more sedate area. No chance of a scene. No family members to attend. Just two sisters acting out a scene too comfortable for conflict. When I got there, she was already there, wrapped in a cream coat, holding a cappuccino that had gone cold. Her eyes were gentle as she gazed up. Too supple. She said, "I'm glad you came," in a softer voice than I remembered. I kept my scarf on when I sat across from her. Let's avoid wasting time. Rhea gave a tight smile. All right. Take a look at Christmas. It wasn't like that. I arched an eyebrow. Oh, did someone make you say that I wasn't family by hacking your voice? She gave a small flinch. The situation was intense at the time. People were feeling things, I said, and you went along with it, and Celeste was pushing hard. It wasn't denied by Rhea. Instead, she extracted a manila envelope from her bag. I felt sick to my stomach. What is that? Without trying to conceal the sharpness in my voice, I questioned. It was slid across the table by her. It's documentation. Legal matters. Documents pertaining to power of attorney. Dad wants you back. We reasoned that perhaps we might talk more easily if we took care of this first. I kept my hands off of it. So by no pressure you mean this? You don't get to cut me out and then put me back in when it's convenient, I stated in a flat voice. She said, and we're all exhausted. You've always been the more competent person. You know how these things operate. We simply were afraid. I lowered my voice and leaned forward. You can't get away with using fear. When Celeste gave her little speech, you all applauded. To my absence you toasted. What comes next? Dad is afraid of losing control of the trust fund. Which is why you are here. Rhea averted her gaze. That isn't the case. I shoved the envelope back in her direction. That's exactly how it is. She didn't respond. I'm no longer your legal defense, I declared while standing, and I'm not your sentimental one at all. She was sitting there, looking at the unopened folder, when I left her. The latte is now ice cold. I had trouble sleeping that night. Once my phone buzzed. A note from Jonah. I owe you an apology. I saw what Celeste was doing for years, and I said nothing. I told myself staying quiet was neutral. It wasn't. It made it worse. Then came another message. You weren't crazy. You were just alone. Stunned, I gazed at the screen. Jonah had never spoken before. Detached. Switzerland in all family conflicts. Now though this. I ran my fingers across the keyboard. I typed thank you. After then it was erased. I laid there with my phone locked and my eyes following the cracks in the ceiling. Mind looping. Following Jonah's messages, the room's silence seemed to become louder. And the screen came back to life as I was beginning to comprehend that change. The sun had not yet risen. Celeste. No salutations? There is no punctuation. You've gone too far. If something happens to Mom or Dad, it's on you. I spent a whole minute looking at the screen, awaiting another moment. Background? Clarification. Even a phony apology. Nothing arrived. Only that single line. A danger disguised as a worry. A sentence that, if I allowed it, could slit guilt wide open. I didn't respond. I padded into the kitchen instead, turned on the light, and poured myself a cup of metal-tasting coffee. The pressure that was rising just beneath my skin caused my hand to shake, not because I was afraid. A little fracture had already appeared in the ceramic by the time I set the mug on the table. Reconciliation was not what they desired. A reset button was what they desired. They preferred the me who paid up and kept quiet. That grinned despite taunts, that erased herself and kept the peace. However, I had changed from that version. I had typed a message to the family group chat in 5 different ways by 9:10 a.m. All drafts were erased. None of them seemed sufficient. Until I hit the record button. This time I spoke without trembling. I answered, I am not your villain. I am the result of you. I paused for a moment before moving on. I kept quiet for years because I believed that maintaining the family's unity was more important than speaking the truth. I took in the insults, the deception. You guys made me into a financial mess? I mentally rationalized it. I told myself you were having trouble. But now I see it. You weren't having any trouble. You were taking advantage of me. I stopped. I will no longer be the scapegoat. Additionally, if you attempt to disparage me, intimidate me, or turn this against me, I'll make everything public. Each and every receipt, each and every recording. All of those documents and more. I'm not playing bluffs. I hit send to end the message. Don't be theatrical. Just some clarity. The ensuing quiet was nearly deafening. My phone rang again 2 hours later. Eliza was the one. I had no idea it was that horrible. I thought she was referring to someone else at first. Then another message appeared. I apologize for clapping. I believe I mistook it for a show. As if it weren't genuine. Then another. Celeste stated I was picking sides if I didn't support the vote. Mom also informed me that you had already made the decision to go. I felt trapped. 3 times I read those lines again. There was not a complete apology. However, that was the closest thing I had experienced without an invitation in years. I will speak up if you want me to. I didn't respond. Not quite yet. I wasn't prepared to put my trust back in her. However, something softened within me. Only one notch. I sat by myself at my kitchen table that evening, only the ticking of the thermostat and my breath. I had trembling hands, not out of fear, right after release. From the satisfaction of speaking at last, of being heard at last. Just to hear it spoken, I muttered it to the silence. Perhaps I was never a quiet person. Perhaps they simply never paid attention. I woke up to silence the following morning. However, it felt different. Not heavier but empty. I acted instinctively, packing up the fragments of a life I owed no one. There was no strategy, only momentum, as if everything else had to come after I said the words. Near the coat closet, the final box fell with a dull thud. I simply moved the necessities into drawers and stopped labeling anything. Shutting the cupboards, I took in the empty space of my new abode. No pictures of the family, no inheritances. The phrase home is where the heart is not framed. Walls. Tidy. Quiet. 3 days after the explosion, I signed the lease and completed all the severances I could think of. New contacts for emergencies. No common financial connections. Legal notices, documented and filed. I modified the passwords. Counts were moved. They even removed Dad's name from the trust backups because they believed I wouldn't notice. This time I hadn't missed anything. An old red sweater was neatly folded on the kitchen counter. One Mom had given me years ago at a very difficult Christmas sleigh. Inside there was a small stitched tag that read in gold-threaded snowflakes. I will always love you. She had accused me of being selfish that same year for not co-signing a loan for Mason. On my way to the grocery store, I gave the sweater to a shelter. It buzzed on my phone. For the final time, I opened the family thread and typed. My number remains constant, but you'll never be as good as I was. Then, all of them were barred. Each and every one. Silence didn't feel like safety to me. However, it did. Nothing arrived for 3 days. The messages then resumed. But from fresh figures this time. A picture was the first. Their living area. The typical tree. The same location. But where gifts had once been stacked, there was a huge hole. Without you, it doesn't feel the same. All night long, Sophie sobbed. Ria wrote. Another one 10 minutes later. We have fallen behind on our mortgage. You no longer give a damn, do you? Rose. Then of all people, Mason. We all regret the things we spoke. You went nuclear, though. Why would you harm your own family in this way? Not one of them apologized. They didn't inquire about my well-being. They only gestured with worried fingers. As if I had committed the crime of their suffering. I was standing by the window of my new kitchen. Behind the fog of the mountains, city lights fade. And allowed the texts to accumulate like unseen mail that I would never read. I poured a glass of wine after that. This time, use a clean tumbler instead of holiday glassware. I went outside to the balcony. I wasn't bothered by the cold tonight. There was no music, no messages appeared. Additionally, for once, I had no inner voice asking if I had gone too far. They had no desire for me to recover. They wanted me to be controllable. And at last I realized the distinction. The cold began to seem familiar after a few nights. Nearly welcome, I spent more time than normal sitting on the balcony, observing the flickering lights from the building next door. A dog barked twice somewhere, then nothing. That was the kind of stillness I enjoyed. The kind in which I was required by no one. My phone then buzzed. It's from Leah Harmon. We hadn't communicated for more than a decade. Facebook background noise from college pals. Hey, I'm sorry to ask, but how are you? I had heard that you were going through a difficult time. I got a message from Celeste. Claimed you might be in a bad situation. Wanted to confirm your safety. I took a while to reply. The screen darkened and locked as I continued to stare at it. Her new game was this. I launched Messenger. One more? And yet another. Individuals I hadn't spoken to in a long time. A few from high school. Others from a work that I had long since quit. They all had uncannily similar messages. You've been isolating, she said, that you could feel overburdened. I'm here if you ever want to talk. It's acceptable to feel bad. The tone of each was unbearably sweet, encased in worry, but sank in condemnation. Don't worry about this. It was a campaign. The smoke turned to fire a few hours later. On Facebook, an ambiguous post appeared, written by Andrea, a woman, someone I collaborated with on a charity initiative years ago. At best, a casual acquaintance now. We must discuss mental health more, particularly when someone lashes out, cut off their family, and act like a victim while wreaking havoc. I wasn't named. It wasn't required. My name was tagged by a mutual buddy 3 comments down. A screenshot of an out-of-context communication I had sent Ria months prior was then shared by another person. I don't think I can continue to do this with them. It wears you out. They only needed one word, tiring, to tell a fresh tale. That I lacked stability. Emotionally brittle? Risky. Then came the murmurs, using direct communications, in smaller posts, in the politely cruel language. She was very sweet once. She's freezing now. The holidays are here. At Christmas, who shuts off contact with their family? Perhaps she needs assistance. Then Aunt Faye, who hadn't spoken to me since I was a teenager, made the following comment. All of us ought to offer up prayers for her. I refrained from crying. I didn't become angry. Instead, I opened my laptop and began writing a statement for the public. A sharp object. Articulate, laced with evidence. However, I stopped typing halfway through. What was the purpose? Answers were not what they sought. Their only goal was to gain control. I gave my lawyer a call. Celeste was given a formal cease and desist notice at the conclusion of the day. Screenshots were attached, logs of messages, and a warning that there would be legal repercussions for any such defamation. No more phoning. No more dropping of folders. I used their lingo this time. As I sent the last email that evening, I muttered to myself, "You're not succeeding. You're breathing heavily," and I could tell she heard by the hush that ensued. The quiet was short-lived. My home was knocked on 2 days after I sent the cease and desist. 3 stubby rappers? Then nothing. I didn't think anyone would show up. With a tightening heart, I looked through the peephole. Eliza was the one. She was standing there with a tote that appeared to have been packed quickly, and a duffel bag draped over her shoulder. She had a blotchy face, swollen eyes, smudged mascara, no grin, just fatigue. As I opened the door, she apologized for arriving in this manner. Without asking, I moved aside. As if her limbs were heavy, she entered slowly. I remained silent. Not quite yet. I simply waited. After a time standing in the center of my living room, she whispered, "I am no longer able to be with them. It is tainted. Everything." After giving her a single nod, I locked the door. We took seats on the couch side by side. Like old pals who have forgotten how to have a new beginning. She didn't say anything for a long time. Eliza whispered, I should have said something sooner. But Celeste found out after I messaged you. I tightened my chest as I gazed at her. She went on, her voice trembling. She cornered me in the kitchen. Stated that she would cut me off entirely if I ever got in touch with you again. Informed me that I was picking a traitor. Then Mom added that quiet was a sign of loyalty. Eliza hesitated, glassy eyes. I doubt I ever understood how profound that was. The command. The terror. Yes, I answered quietly. Until you're the target, it's easy to miss it. She truly did stare at me. Jonah departed. He is lodging with a friend. According to him, Celeste attempted to pressure him into writing a statement regarding your mental illness. My throat ached. He declined, she continued. Eliza gave me a folded piece of paper after reaching into her bag. An email on paper. An entire communication thread. From Rhea. From Celeste. Each one is more disgusting than the others. Gaslighting. Dangers. Manipulation. You were correct, she affirmed. Almost everything. I've also stopped acting like this. It wasn't until she said those words that I realized how much I needed to hear them. Another communication arrived later that evening. From Celeste. She turned against us because of you. Same to how you tainted everything. I didn't think twice. You did that on your own. I blocked her after that. Call. Email. All platforms. After weeks of sitting on it, I finally opened the document. An official statement supporting Jonah's divorce petition. I put my signature on it. I scanned it. Forwarded it to his attorney. Completed. Silently, without a word, Eliza and I sat in the gentle light of the living room. Simply being there. Simply take a breath. No repairing. Don't pretend. Additionally, I've never in my life. I wasn't the cornerstone of the family. I had freedom. That night I sat on the balcony while the January cold wounded the sky. I brought a blanket for her. She simply tucked it over herself and reclined on the chair next to mine without saying, "Thank you." We didn't communicate. We didn't have to, because it didn't feel like avoidance for the first time that we were silent. It was peaceful. After a while I said, "You're safe here." With a deep exhale she nodded and said, "This time for real." And I softly thought that perhaps I was also secure. I discovered the letter in my mailbox 2 weeks later, sandwiched between a coupon brochure and a utility bill. No address for return. Just my name, scribbled by hand in a skewed script I knew well. I was completely stopped by that. My fingers were getting tighter around the envelope as I stood on the steps outside my building. My initial reaction was to throw it away. It was only 6 steps to the trash can. However, something inside of me said, "Go through it? Not for them. For me." I went upstairs, set it down on the countertop. While the tea water cooled, I gazed at it for an hour. I then took a seat, carefully opened the flap, and opened the initial page. "You are Miss Daly. Don't apologize." No entry. My mother's loopy cursive was used to write just that line. Second page. "Your dad hasn't been feeling well. His breathing has becoming more difficult. Additionally, Sophie is often inquiring about your return date. She created a drawing for you. A pain, not a sharp one. Specifically the type that rubs against old bruises." Next, the third page. "The house could be lost. The mortgage has fallen behind too much. All we need is a little assistance. We won't ask again after that. Mara, please." "We'll never ask again" was emphasized twice. I went over all 3 pages again. After folding them, I got up and carried the letter to the balcony outside. I took out the porcelain dish I kept in which I kept succulents, placed the letter within. A match was lit. The paper quickly curled. The borders of black fold in on themselves. An orange flame is formed by ink leaking. I refrained from crying. I refrained from screaming. I wasn't even depressed. I saw the thin, gentle smoke ascend and then disappear into the sky. And muttered, "I no longer feel furious. I just finished." In that instant there was something final. As opposed to slamming a door, it's more like throwing the key into a river after removing it from your ring. I discovered an old emergency contact form in a drawer later that evening that I had left partially completed. I took it out. Every old name has been crossed off. I wrote my own. Me. At last. Eliza requested me to walk Sophie to school a few days later. She didn't want to leave her daughter with a sitter because she had a shift. Without thinking, I nodded. It was not required. It was a decision. Sophie skipped every third step, while she held my hand the entire time. She gave me that gentle, inquisitive gaze that only children can have when we arrived at the gate. "Are you coming to my birthday?" she inquired. I lowered myself to eye level and grinned. "Only if I'm asked." She gave a nod. Then she dashed to her class. For a minute, I just watched her vanish into a throng of color and conversation. The clouds had finally broken when I turned to go home. Slow, golden sunlight slicing through the gray. Additionally, the conclusion didn't feel like a collapse for once. It had the feel of a clearing. Perhaps you have been the one to keep everything together. Perhaps you kept quiet to maintain harmony until you discovered that doing so was causing you to lose your tranquility. I believed for years that love required sacrifice. Being the strong one meant taking all the hits, clearing up all the mess, bearing the burden without ever seeking assistance. However, this is what I discovered. How much you can withstand isn't what makes you strong. It all comes down to determining when enough is enough. It's about making an unapologetic choice for yourself. Family members may not always respect your boundaries, because it was they who profited from your lack of any. They will label it betrayal when you ultimately draw that boundary. However, it isn't. It's getting better. This story isn't meant to be dramatic. I share it with anyone who has ever felt bad about leaving. For refusing. For preserving their tranquility. It's not selfish of you to outgrow dysfunction. Your demand for respect is not callous. You're not alone either. I would like to know whether you have ever had to decide between people and peace. Between defending your limits and appeasing people who don't respect them. If yes, what did you decide on? Setting limits and maintaining a connection. I would love to know what you think. Simply put 1 in the comment section below if this story resonated with you. Please tell me which state or city you're viewing from. Every remark was read by me. Really? And if this film made you consider anything, perhaps strength, perhaps some clarification, then remember to click the subscribe button to ensure you don't miss the next story. Because believe me, there are others rebuilding as well. Your next chapter should be written the way you want it to be. The truth is that choosing peace can occasionally be the loudest victory. I refrained from screaming. I didn't seek an apology. I walked away after letting the truth be known. The ideal form of retaliation. Living a good life, establishing limits, and becoming into someone they can no longer contact. Reclaim your power by healing, not by hating, if you're harboring pain. Expand. Keep your peace. Additionally, remember that you are not alone. If you've experienced something similar, leave a remark so we can connect and have a conversation. Because sometimes the first step to letting go is telling your experience. Tell me then how you recovered from betrayal.